Tonight you go to bed and your number is 110. You did everything right. No dessert, no late snack. A short walk after dinner. You feel good about it. Then you wake up. You check your glucose before you've even had a sip of water, before you've eaten anything at all, and the number staring back at you is 160. Stay with me for a second, because I want you to notice something. Your first thought was probably, what did I do wrong? Maybe you started mentally replaying last night's dinner. Maybe you wondered if your body is just getting worse, no matter what you do. I want to tell you something plainly before we go any further. That number, by itself, does not mean you failed. There is a specific, well-documented reason fasting numbers climb overnight in exactly this pattern. And once you understand it, that 160 stops feeling like a verdict and starts feeling like information. That's what we're going to do together in this video. I spend my time helping adults understand the changes that happen inside the body after 50, especially the ones that show up quietly, in a number on a small screen before breakfast. Not secrets, not what your doctor won't tell you, just a plain explanation of what your body is actually doing overnight, and why the rules that work for daytime eating don't always explain what happens while you sleep. Before we go further, I want to ask you something, because it genuinely helps me make better videos for the people watching them. How old are you, and where are you watching from? Drop your age and your city or country in the comments below. I read these. It helps me understand who's dealing with this exact 6 a.m. number, so the next explanation I make is even more useful to you. Here's the assumption almost everyone makes. My sugar is high in the morning because of something I ate or did yesterday. That feels logical. Food goes in, glucose goes up. So if the number is high, something you did must be the cause. But here's what's actually happening for a lot of people. You can eat a careful dinner, keep your evening completely clean, and still watch your fasting number climb by 30, 40, even 50 points overnight. That's not your dinner catching up with you. That's your liver and a small group of hormones doing something they've done every single morning of your life. It's just that after 50, especially with insulin resistance or diabetes in the picture, your body doesn't cancel it out the way it used to. One pattern I hear about constantly from adults managing this after 50 is almost word for word the same. My numbers are fine all day. I only have a problem in the morning. Many people describe checking their glucose after lunch, after dinner, and seeing something completely reasonable, and then getting blindsided by the fasting number the next day. The question I hear most often is some version of, if my diet is under control, why does this one number keep misbehaving? That contradiction is the whole reason this video exists. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Margaret, because her story is really the story of thousands of people watching this right now. Margaret is 63. A few years ago, she started keeping a food diary. She cut back on rice, cut back on bread, started taking a short walk after dinner most nights. Her daytime numbers responded. She'd check after lunch and see something in a comfortable range, and it felt like proof that the changes were working. Then the fasting number wouldn't move. Some mornings it was 145. Some mornings, 160. She started second-guessing everything. Was it the small handful of cashews she had at 8 p.m.? Was it the one glass of wine on Friday? She began cutting things out almost at random, hoping one of them was the culprit. Nothing she removed made a consistent difference. That's the part that scared her the most. Not the number itself, but the feeling that she couldn't find the lever that controlled it. What actually helped Margaret wasn't a new food rule. It was learning what her body was doing between 3 and 8 in the morning, while she was asleep and not eating anything at all. Once she understood that mechanism, she stopped guessing. I'll come back to where she landed at the end of this video. Here's what you see. A fasting glucose reading that's higher than it has any right to be, given how careful your evening was. Here's what's actually happening underneath that number. Somewhere between roughly 3 a.m. and 8 a.m., your body releases a cluster of hormones: cortisol, growth hormone, glucagon, and epinephrine. Think of them as your body's early morning alarm messengers. Their job, every single morning, for every person alive, is to wake your metabolism up before you're conscious, to make sure there's enough fuel circulating in your blood to get you through the first part of your day. To do that, they send a signal to your liver. Think of your liver as a sugar pantry. Most nights, it's been quietly storing glucose. When that early morning hormone signal arrives, the liver opens the pantry and releases stored sugar into your bloodstream, right on schedule, whether or not you're going to eat breakfast. In someone without insulin resistance, this isn't a problem. Their body releases a quiet, well-timed dose of insulin to balance that sugar release, so the two forces cancel each other out and the fasting number barely moves. But when insulin resistance or diabetes is part of the picture, that balancing insulin response is delayed or blunted. The liver still opens the pantry on time. The insulin that's supposed to meet it either shows up late or doesn't show up in a strong enough dose. The sugar goes out, nothing meets it in time, and your fasting number climbs, often landing squarely in that 140 to 160 range, right around when you wake up. This has a name in clinical medicine: the dawn phenomenon. It's not a flaw in your willpower, it's a mismatch in timing between a hormone signal that happens on a fixed schedule and an insulin response that isn't keeping pace with it the way it used to. Now, here's the part most people miss. Dawn phenomenon isn't the only explanation for a morning spike, and this is where a lot of confusion online actually comes from. There are two other patterns that can produce a similar-looking number, and telling them apart matters. The second pattern is waning insulin, or waning medication effect. If you take insulin or certain medications in the evening, their effect can simply run out before morning. The dose was covering you at midnight, but not at 6 a.m. That's not a hormone surge overpowering your body. That's a coverage gap. It often responds to a conversation with your doctor about timing or dosing, not to changing what you eat at dinner. The third pattern is far less common than people assume online, and it's called the Somogy effect, a rebound high that follows an unnoticed overnight low blood sugar. Your body overcorrects a dip you never felt happen while you were asleep, and you wake up high instead. Major clinical sources are clear that this is real, but far less common than dawn phenomenon or waning insulin. It's just the one that gets talked about the most because it sounds the most dramatic. The surprising part is this: two people can both wake up at 160, and one of them needs a different dinner, while the other needs a different medication timing, and a third needs to rule out overnight lows entirely. The number looks identical. The cause isn't. That's exactly why guessing and cutting out random foods, the way Margaret did, so often goes nowhere. One more detail worth sitting with. This surge typically peaks somewhere between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m., often landing right around the time most people wake up, which is exactly why the reading you take first thing in the morning is the one that captures it. Check again mid-morning, after you've been up and moving for a while, and the number often looks completely different, because the hormone surge has already passed, and your body has had a chance to catch up. That's part of why this pattern feels so confusing. The worst number of the entire day shows up in the first 60 seconds you're awake, before you've done anything at all. So if the same morning number can come from different causes, what should you actually be paying attention to? I want to give you 3 factors, not as a rigid rule, but as a mental model for where to look. The first factor is evening meal timing and composition. A heavier dinner, eaten later, with a larger portion of carbohydrate and fat together, gives your liver and your bloodstream more to work with, right as that early hormone surge is also adding glucose. It's not that evening food is forbidden, it's that timing and composition change how much the dawn phenomenon has to work with. The second factor is sleep quality. Poor sleep and ongoing stress raise the same hormones involved in the dawn phenomenon, particularly cortisol. A rough night's sleep doesn't just make you tired, it can genuinely amplify the exact hormone surge we just talked about, making the morning number higher than it would otherwise be. The third factor is the overnight hormone and medication window itself. Whether your body's natural insulin response, or your evening medication or insulin dose, is actually covering the hours between 3 and 8 a.m. This is the piece that most home routines can't fix on their own, and it's usually a conversation for your doctor rather than a diet change. Notice what's not on this list as a blanket rule. A specific food being universally bad. Coffee, for example, can raise blood sugar and insulin demand in many people with type 2 diabetes. But the effect varies enough between individuals that it's worth tracking for yourself rather than assuming. The same goes for oatmeal and other so-called healthy carbs at breakfast. Portion size and what you pair it with matter more than the food being inherently good or bad. This is also where I want to gently push back on some advice you may have already heard. One version says you must stop eating entirely after 5 in the evening, or the dawn phenomenon will never improve. Another version says a bedtime snack is essential to prevent your body from overcorrecting overnight. Both of these get repeated as if they're universal rules, and the honest answer is that neither one is true for everyone. For some people, a small, balanced, protein-containing snack in the evening actually smooths out the overnight picture. For others, it adds fuel directly into a system that's already going to release plenty on its own. This is exactly the kind of detail that depends on your own pattern, which is one more reason the week of tracking I'm about to walk you through matters more than any single rule you find online. I'm not going to hand you a hack, and I'm not going to tell you this is a cure. What I want to give you is a framework. 3 things to start observing, starting tonight. First, what you ate at dinner, and roughly how much carbohydrate and fat was on the plate. Second, what time you finished eating, and whether you had anything afterward before bed. Third, what your fasting number was the next morning, before food, before coffee, before anything else. Do that for 1 week, and you'll start to see whether your pattern moves with dinner timing, holds steady no matter what you eat, or seems to track more with how well you slept. That pattern is information your doctor can actually use. You might notice, for example, that on nights you eat dinner earlier and lighter, the morning number is a little lower, which points toward the meal timing factor. Or you might notice the number barely moves no matter what you change at dinner, which points more toward the medication timing or hormone window factor instead. Either finding is useful. The point of the week isn't to fix everything at once. It's to figure out which of the 3 factors is actually driving your number, so you're not guessing blind the way Margaret was. And speaking of your doctor, here are 3 questions worth bringing to your next appointment, because they cut straight to which of the 3 mechanisms we talked about is most likely yours. Is my morning pattern more consistent with dawn phenomenon or with waning insulin or medication effect? Should my evening medication timing or dose be adjusted? Would moving dinner earlier or a short walk after dinner realistically help my specific pattern? Those 3 questions turn a vague, "my numbers are high in the morning," into a conversation your doctor can actually act on. If you've noticed this same pattern, a fine daytime reading and a stubborn morning number, I'd like to hear about it. What's your fasting number usually running, and what time do you typically check it? Share it in the comments. Someone else watching this, checking their meter at 6 a.m. and feeling like they're the only one, might read your comment and realize they're not alone in this. This video is for general health education and does not replace medical advice. Any change to diet, activity, or medication, especially medication timing or dosing, should be discussed with your own doctor before you make it. Margaret still sees a number most mornings that isn't perfect. Some days it's 130, some days it drifts back up toward 150. But something did change for her. She stopped waking up afraid of the meter. She understood that her fasting number wasn't a referendum on her willpower, it was her liver and a handful of hormones doing a job they've always done, meeting an insulin response that just needed a little help keeping pace. Her diabetes didn't disappear. That was never the goal. What she got instead was clarity, knowing which of the 3 patterns was hers, and which questions to bring to her doctor, instead of guessing alone at 6 a.m. Not perfection, clarity.